Hi, it's Nick from the Run Testers, and this is our review of the New Balance FuelCell SuperComp Trainer. So the SuperComp Trainer is a training shoe with a huge stack of foam. It goes up to 47mm at the heel, in fact, and has an 8mm drop, so even the forefoot's at 39mm high. It's a illegally high stack shoe built for training. It's got a carbon plate in there, and the idea is to pair it with a legal racing shoe. And in the SuperComp line, New Balance will have the Pacer, which we've reviewed on the channel, which is a short distance racing shoe, and then the SuperComp Elite, which will be the successor to the RC Elite 2 as a long distance racing shoe. It's very expensive. It's £210 in the UK and $180 in the US. It's a much better deal in the US, essentially. Pretty heavy. It weighs in at 307 grams or 10.8 ounces in my UK size 9. And the principal reason for that weight is the huge stack of FuelCell foam in the midsole there. This is New Balance's soft, springy foam. It's their best foam. They use it on a range of shoes, and they put more of it ever into a shoe with the SuperComp Trainer. There's also a full-length carbon plate running through the shoe, and it actually comes up quite high at the heel within the foam. And the idea is there to create a slightly firmer, more stable feel to your landings, because it is such a high stack of what is a fairly soft foam. It's got a very pronounced rocker going on, and the kind of whole technology bundle you're getting here with the New Balance's shoes in terms of curved plates and rockers is called Energy Arc, which is also seen on other shoes like the SuperComp Pacer. To kind of make sure it is stable, you've got kind of sidewalls on the side of the foam here that your foot sits within the foam. It's got a pretty wide base as well, a very wide base, and then this exaggerated huge cutout, cavernous canyon-like cutout on the bottom of the shoe there, which either is to try and guide your foot into the center of the plate as you're running and not kind of get squiggly and wobbly on that massive stack of foam. You've got a mesh upper, which is actually very lightweight and thin. There's not a lot of cushioning going on. There's some reinforcements around the heel, but it's a fairly soft upper all round that fits almost a bit like a booty style, although there is a bit of a tongue going on there. There's not much padding on the tongue or heel there. It's an upper that's designed to keep the weight down because they're packing so much of it into the bottom of the shoe. And then the outsole has pretty good coverage of kind of strips of rubber on either side of the forefoot and then the heel, and there's even a little bit of rubber on the carbon plate to try and protect it a little bit, which is very interesting. But yeah, you're getting a decent outsole there, I'd say, in terms of grip and durability, although it sits very close to flush with the midsole foam, and there is some exposed foam going on, so we'll see how that holds up. But after 72k of running, I've not seen any undue wear and tear in my pair.
The SuperComp Trainer that I tested was actually a size 8.5 and I'm a size 8. But what I found from that is that it was very comfortable. It felt fine for my feet. There isn't too much extra space in front of the toe for me, so I would probably say size up half a size based on my experience with an 8.5. But equally, I think there'd still be plenty of space in the size 8 as well. So possibly go true to size, but you may want to size up half a size.
So I went true to size with the SuperComp Trainer, and it's been pretty good for me. Like, New Balance shoes often come up a bit tight on me, especially on my right foot. My feet are slightly different sizes, but this has been okay in my normal size. Maybe I could go up half a size and I'd enjoy a slightly roomier fit while still having good lockdown. But yeah, true to size is probably the way to go. It's not as aggressively tight as some of New Balance's shoes have been in the past, like the original Rebel. So I've run about 71k in the SuperComp Trainer. It's one of the more interesting shoes I've tested this year, that's certainly fair to say. Like, after my first run in the shoe, I was convinced I was going to absolutely love it. It was really bouncy, really fun, really enjoyable. The bounce just didn't go away throughout the run. There was no sign of any bottoming out or anything. And I thought it was going to be a particularly great long shoe in particular, and that's what I used it for next. I did a 22 miler in it at around kind of 6:20 per mile, very relaxed pace, a mix of canal towpaths and roads, and it ticked over pretty nicely. But I will say towards the end of the run, it did start to feel a bit big, a bit heavy on the foot, and although the bounce was still there, I kind of wasn't enjoying it as much as on that slightly shorter run. It's interesting because it is a pretty stable shoe, I'd say. Like, I had no problem running, on light trails, like I say, in it, but there's always a little bit of wobble, and the bounce is so exaggerated and noticeable that you kind of think about it a lot, and there's almost a little bit of mental fatigue at the end of a 22 miler in the shoe, just because you're thinking about every step a little bit more than you would do in some other shoes. I found so anyway, and also it is not the lightest shoe in the world. But yeah, so it was interesting, that long run. That's when my kind of opinion on the shoe probably turned away from expecting to really love it to having a few more doubts. Kind of happened today as well, and I did another kind of 10 miler in it early in the morning, and it was good. It was a good run, especially for early morning runs, which I'm not a big fan of, and it is so bouncy. But yeah, it just kind of wears you down a little bit running in the shoe, I found anyway. Like, it's just a bit fatiguing. Like, the legs feel fresh, but there is, I think, probably some extra wear in terms of stabilizing yourself in a shoe this big. Maybe it's my imagination, but it certainly mentally wears on you. I found that you're always thinking about your next foot placement a little bit more than you do in other shoes. And although it feels good and fun on the foot, it doesn't feel very natural, and it doesn't disappear on the foot. So I think over those long runs, maybe something like the Hoka Mac 5, for example, really just disappears on the foot, and that's great. It doesn't offer as much bounce or protection as this shoe, but you're not thinking about your shoe all the time, and I think that does start to play on my mind after a while when I have been using the shoe. I will say quickly, the cutout can pick up stones as well, but what's really interesting, I had a massive stone in one of my shoes this morning when I got back. Didn't notice it at all on the run. It's like a real Princess in the Pea situation, like the opposite of that. Like, all that foam really meant I couldn't feel a huge stone in the shoe, which is surprising. Luckily, it didn't damage the carbon plate or anything like that. The other one I took it to the track for a speed session just to see, because it could be used as a pretty good daily trainer because it is so bouncy despite the weight. And I was doing 20 reps of 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off, and I used this for the second 10 reps, having used a Nike Zoom Fly 5 for the first 10. This is a lot better than the Nike Zoom Fly 5. It's a much more bouncy, enjoyable shoe. It's lighter despite being much bigger stack, and you get a lot more from it when you are pushing the pace. It was outrageously bouncy on the an already bouncy track. But yeah, I mean, those kind of reps I think it was quite good for, just because really you can almost do those in any shoe, and it does protect the legs quite well. But the problem probably I think would be using it for kind of extended reps of maybe like a 1, 2K, 2 mile reps, that kind of thing, where you start to feel a bit too big. And although it is bouncy, it doesn't feel fantastically efficient on the foot just because it is a big shoe.
Okay, so the SuperComp Trainer is a really interesting shoe. I love cushion shoes. I love Max cushion shoes. So I was really excited to try this shoe out for a variety of runs. Basically, I was a massive fan of the FuelCell TC. It's one of my favorite ever shoes for training, so the SuperComp Trainer was a natural, interesting shoe for me to give a go. And I've done quite a lot running this now, so I've done about 70k in this shoe so far, and that's varied massively between 5k interval training sessions all the way up to a 25k run I did the other day for my marathon training. The interval training I did at paces between about 3-minute 40 kilometers all the way up to my marathon pace run, which was at about 5-minute kilometers. What I found is that I've really enjoyed running in the shoe. I think it's a really interesting, nice shoe to wear for lots of different types of running. For the interval training, it did feel like I could pick up the pace nicely, despite the fact that it's quite a heavy shoe and there's a lot of cushioning on it. I wouldn't say it's the best shoe for running interval training and running at pace in. It does feel a little bit big, but it does the job. It's not like wearing a Brooks Glycerin 20 or something for a speed training session, where you definitely feel that shoe is slowing you down because it's not designed for that. This has got a little bit of kick in it, and the carbon plate mixed with that FuelCell foam does mean that you can pick up the pace nicely, and it's not a bad experience. However, what I found when I was doing longer runs in this shoe is that initially I absolutely loved it. For the first 5 to 10k, just felt like there's a lovely turnover, lovely bit of propulsion, nice bit of bounce from that FuelCell foam along with the carbon plate. And it just feels great. It's really enjoyable to run in for that first bit of the run. However, as you get to the longer distances in this shoe, and when I was getting up to about 17k, 18k, my legs were getting a bit tired. They started to feel a bit more sluggish. It sort of lost some of the benefits that you get from the foam and the carbon plate, and does feel a little bit like it's a too heavy a shoe to enjoy at that distance. So I would have expected this shoe to be really good at long distance effort. It's got a lot of cushioning in it. It helps propulsion and move you faster and give you a bit of energy return when your legs are getting tired. But I just don't think it really holds out for long enough. So when you get to those longer distance efforts, I really wanted something a little bit lighter and just a little bit less bulky, really. The other thing I'd say about the SuperComp Trainer is that high stack of midsole foam may not be to everyone's tastes. It can feel a little bit risky at some points. There's been times where I've stepped on a bit of road that's got a slight hole in it, or I've stepped on a rock, and you can instantly feel that midsole stack moving your foot a little bit further than you want to. It's not a nice experience. It doesn't feel very stable when that happens. It feels relatively stable on the flats, and I've not really noticed that midsole stack being a problem on normal running. But when you start turning corners quickly, it it does become a little bit precarious, and it's not something that I enjoy when I'm out running, especially when training on race day, when I'm wearing a Vaporfly or something like that. It's an experience that you kind of have to have with shoes like that. But with something like this, I don't really want an unstable shoe on my long distance training runs. So my verdict on the SuperComp Trainer is that it's an enjoyable, fun shoe to wear, but I think that it is limited quite a bit by the bulk of the shoe, and I don't think it is particularly good at all types of running. It is versatile to the point that you can run faster in it. It is bouncy, there's a lot of energy return in it, and it is an enjoyable shoe to run at speed for a bit. But when you start hitting those longer efforts and you want something that's going to help you maintain a consistent, nice pace, like if you were doing a marathon or something like that, I just feel like it gets sluggish the longer you wear it for, and it becomes less enjoyable for those distances. And something that's so max cushioned, you'd expect it to be better for longer distance, easy runs, longer distance daily training sessions, but it just seems to only really work for me up until about 15k, and then it just gets a little bit too cumbersome, and I don't really get the benefits of that plate and the FuelCell midsole foam. In comparison to other shoes out there, I still think the FuelCell TC is a far superior shoe. It delivers much of the same things that you get in the trainer, but it just feels like you can run a lot faster. I think you could race in this shoe perfectly well. I'd be more than happy to run half marathons, even 10Ks in this shoe instead of a carbon plate racing shoe, and I think it would be absolutely perfect. I definitely wouldn't do that in this shoe. I can't think of any race that I'd want to wear this trainer for. It's not a racing shoe. It's not the main focus of it, but you can do that in the FuelCell TC, and you can't in the SuperComp Trainer. Other shoes that you could probably compare with this shoe to an extent are things like the Saucony Triumph range, and that shoe hasn't got a plate in it, but it does feel bouncy. It does feel great for longer distance efforts. And I think the difference with that shoe is that when you get to the really long distance efforts, it still feels like it's protecting your legs. It doesn't feel clumpy or uncomfortable. And it's just a really enjoyable, comfortable shoe to wear for those runs. Whereas this doesn't really feel great after you've been running in it for a while. I still think it's a great shoe, and I still like wearing it for runs. I just think that it's limited. And for the price of this shoe, which is pretty expensive for a training shoe, when you could go out there and buy something like the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 for pretty much the same price. Far superior shoe that you can use for lots of different stuff. I think the only benefit you might get from this, and we haven't been able to really test that yet, is that it's probably going to be more durable than the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3. But that shoe, you can use it for easy day miles, daily runs, and race efforts, and it feels fantastic. It doesn't feel like a Vaporfly, it doesn't feel too unnatural to wear. So it's definitely worth looking at that shoe instead of this for the price, because it's a very expensive shoe if you're just getting it for training runs.
I think the SuperComp Trainer, succeeds in achieving what it sets out to, in that it is a high-spec, phenomenally bouncy daily training shoe that you can use for a decent variety of runs and really protect your legs, make them feel fresh, and using it in partnership with a carbon plate shoe for race day, when you get a similar feeling but much more stripped back and lower on a legal height racing shoe, that could work quite well in tandem with the SuperComp Trainer. Probably what I learned in testing the shoe is actually that I just don't love this kind of shoe. It's just a bit too much for me. It's just in every way, it's just too much. Like, it really is big, it's exaggerated, and yeah, I did find it just slightly mentally draining to run in a shoe this big over long distances. And even though it was stable for me, I didn't really have any major concerns. It just felt a bit wobbly and a bit too noticeable on the foot for me. And I don't think it's offering a superb level of performance that elevates it beyond other daily training shoes. So I'd rather have something that does feel a bit more natural on the foot, that's maybe a bit quicker and lighter as well, something like the Saucony Endorphin Speed, even the Hoka Mach 5, which hasn't got a plate at all. I just think, yeah, they feel a bit better on the foot, and I can relax into my runs a bit more than I could do, I found, in this shoe. And then when it comes to easy runs, there's loads of really nice cushion shoes that are less dramatic. Even the Nike Invincible is less dramatic than this shoe, and I enjoyed the Invincible more as an easy shoe. Also like the Brooks Glycerin 20s, yeah, much more regular feeling, but still feels very good, very fun. I really love running in those shoes, but it is a little bit less exaggerated than the SuperComp Trainer. And then on top of all of that, the price is absurd to me. Like, it's obviously varies from country to country, and in the US maybe it might be a bit more competitive, but £210 is way too expensive for this shoe. The Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 costs £210, and you could use that as the best daily trainer going anywhere, even though it is also an amazing racing shoe. So if you're getting the same price as a full-fledged carbon racing shoe, actually it's going to come in a lot more expensive than lots of carbon plate racing shoes in sales. Like even things like the Vaporfly. And although, it is a bit more stable and maybe built more for daily training, like when it gets to this kind of level of technology crammed into a midsole, I think you'd be just as happy in a few different super shoes for your training runs, even like the RC Elite 2 from New Balance, if it's going to cost you similar or even more to buy the SuperComp instead. If you're really into this kind of shoe, I think it will probably perform as you're expecting it to. It is very bouncy, it is very interesting, it's very fun, but I wasn't overly enamored with it. I found it, a bit too much to use regularly for training, and it's not one that I prefer to more conventional daily trainers. So guys, that's our review of the SuperComp Trainer. Let us know in the comments if you tried the shoe. Are you absolutely loving it? Is it the bounciest thing in the world? And you'll take that over everything else. Doesn't matter if there's any kind of caveats or high price. It's really fun, really bouncy. If that's you, let us know. Please do like, subscribe, ring the little bell, go and listen to the Run Tester podcast. And we'll see you next time.